Hello, friends, and welcome to Art with Gaurav. In today's episode of Unlocking Creativity, we dive into the creative world of Rakesh Nanda, a visionary animation filmmaker and comic artist who's redefining Indian storytelling. Join us as we explore the journey of his animation studio and the magic behind his popular and relatable content. Let's have a quick glimpse of his work and meet him on the other side of this showreel. Hello, Rakesh.
Hi Gaurav,
Hi, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. I'm really feeling good after seeing that lovely portfolio that you put up. That's uh,
Oh,
that's that's a really
all,
nice
all
surprise.
credit, all credit to you for the amazing content that you keep
But
sharing
just
on your
seeing
channel.
that up, it just made me really nostalgic. Going through all of that, it's like 3 years of work, and I mean snippets from that. So
Mhm.
lovely to start off with that. Thank you.
Great. So I remember like seeing your illustrations and comic strips on your Instagram page a
Mm.
few years back. Like not few years, but I think it's been almost a decade. I used to follow you from since 2014, 15, and you were putting some really amazing character illustrations and small comic strips, and those characters were also very relatable. And now I see the same characters in the animation world of the Happy Slate, right? I guess those characters are being used in your content right now. So it's a pretty long journey from the comic strip to the animation world. How has this transition, taken place, and what is your connection with these characters? Like, what was your original inspiration?
Well, like you said, it's like first of all, yeah, we have been following. I think we have been following each other since close to 10 years now. It's
Hmm.
like a full decade, such a long time. And yeah, I've been drawing illustrations. I've been telling my own stories, my own comics, much before 10 years, right? So I came onto Insta
Mm.
10 years back, but I have
Yes.
been doing it since childhood. I think we all, as artists, have kind of started drawing from childhood, most of us, and
Mm.
carried it through. So I was always drawing comics, always telling stories through my doodles, through my comics, right across
Mm.
childhood. And then that eventually, as I got a better hold of my skills, as I moved forward in my design journey, and I started being able to express my imagination with better forms, better shapes, with more legible drawings. And it was a continuous evolution process. The core was always that, to put your imagination on paper in different forms, to put it starting with your drawing book, to making your own four-page comics as you are a little kid, to
Mm.
then doing professional work for clients and others, and to creating your own. But that creating your own content, creating your own stories is always what I feel is what drives one from the start to come into this field. So that was always there at the back of this thing, while trying to figure out how to, uh, you know, uh, how to earn a living while doing that, because generating revenue from your own original storytelling is a long run process, right? And it's not that
Absolutely, yeah.
in India. So while you do so that was always in the background in some form or the other. So the one that you mentioned in Insta was one form of that. Those stories
Hmm.
being told, getting more and more evolved, and now it's in the Happy Slate in a more evolved form, where to an extent finally we have started understanding how to create how to sustainably create original content. But now it's much more beyond my own personal storytelling, right? So that was
Hmm.
just me. Now it's not just those characters, it's so many more characters, so many more ideas, because there is now a team behind it. But of course, the soul of it is still the same. Everybody trying to tell their own stories with
Hmm.
these things.
So
That's
somehow
kind of.
those characters, like there were school kids and there were those typical characters that
Mm,
we see around us. Those have
mm,
become the foundation for your animation venture.
Kind of, yeah. In a way, they
Okay.
have become like the language of Happy Slate to one extent, because
Hmm.
that nostalgia, that sense of the things that we have all gone through, taking those and building a trip, building stories out of that. But it's not just that. That is one of our core strength. I think that's what everybody relates to. Also, our audience also on YouTube,
Hmm.
but we also consciously explore other types of stories as well outside nostalgia, like stories about social commentary. We have done a few films which are pretty big on our channel on
Hmm.
social commentary. Stories about, now we are doing something around a satire on the politics. That's now with the election season coming. So
Right.
it's beyond that, but that's kind of one of our core kind of stories that we tell. And you are
Hmm.
right, has always been the kind of story that I personally naturally end up telling, because I think we all have that slice of life, growing up in middle class families in the 90s, all go through the same
Absolutely.
things. We all have those stories.
Yes, yes. Like all the kids born in 80s or 90s would really connect with all of your content. And as you mentioned, you have also expanded into other themes and other subjects to tell the stories on. So like still I feel that you have focused more on the Indian audiences,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Was that like by choice, or
That is
was
absolutely
there
by
some?
choice. That is
Okay.
absolutely by choice, because that's my personal vision always has been in terms of the content, in terms of creating content. And I think that not I think that is the vision of our studio as well, to create Indian stories, Indian characters, which, because we have, I mean, that is the only story that we can tell authentically, because we have that experience. I cannot tell the story about someone in Japan or someone in US. I can
Yes.
tell abstract story, imaginary worlds, but the root would
Hmm.
still be based on my own experiences. And the same goes for everyone who works in Happy Slate. So everyone has their experiences rooted in growing up in India. So that is very clear for us that we want to create better, uh, more authentic stories about the Indian people, the Indian stories essentially.
Okay. Okay. Great. So how do you like select an idea to work upon? Do you go with your instinct, or is there like sort of a test that every idea goes through before getting
It
into
is a
production?
process now. Yeah. So now that we produce almost one film every week, sometimes it's a bit here and there, but that's the kind of
Hmm.
frequency we are working with. So there is a lot of investment there, in terms of time and money, which goes into producing these films. So there is, of course, also, you want those films to work, so it goes through a process, and a lot of the failure and success of a film depends on the idea. So initially
Hmm.
we used to do it instinctively, but now we have
Okay.
a team which is essentially a three to four people. It's a small team of people
Okay.
who come up with ideas. So it's led by our creative head, who is called Shilpa,
Okay.
who comes from a creative and social media background. So we, in that team, what we do is everybody comes up with different multiple ideas around the topic. So that brings out a diversity of ideas, and then as a team we understand and we brainstorm. We pick
Hmm.
which ideas work, which ideas do not work, so that we end up with the strongest of ideas. And we go one level beyond that. Once we have three four strong ideas, we do, this is an internal validation. Then we do an external validation where we run it through 30 40 core group of people that we have, like a core set of audience that we consider, who reflect the kind of tastes we want to cater to. And they do a voting on those ideas. So after that, we select our final set of ideas.
Okay, so you also get some kind of feedback from let's say a small group of audience that may be in your target, right?
Yeah.
And then you finalize to publish it on your channel, The Happy Slate.
Yeah, then we go through the process of scripting, storyboarding, and pre-production, production to finally.
Right,
But
right.
the idea goes through a lot of validation before it goes to that stage.
Okay, or it's only validated at the beginning. Once it is done, it has to go live, right?
Yeah,
There is
yeah,
no contemplating, after the idea is finished, because as artists we tend to, judge our work or start. to think about how could we have done it better, or all those thoughts. Does
We
that
do.
happen with you all?
It used to happen earlier
Mm-hmm.
when we were starting out, when we were a smaller team, when there were just one or two people figuring out, but not now, because now it's also critical to have a it's critical to have a set process when you are doing
Right.
production. After production, when you're doing one film it's okay, but when you're doing film after film you cannot afford to go back. That's why it's
Mm.
so that's why we do so many validation to finally arrive on an idea, and then once we lock it we move on, because a lot of times we are not happy, like you said, later on we realize this could have been
Mm.
better, but
Mm.
we try to fix what we can later down the road, but the overall idea doesn't really change. And if we think it was good enough, we still go ahead and put out a good enough film rather than delaying it and not putting it out, because a film is
Right.
tied to a release date also. If it's a Father's Day film, it cannot come. It's useless if it comes 2 days later. So
Right.
it
Right.
happens a lot of times, like you said, where we are not happy with the idea or not happy with the
Mm-hmm.
product, but we went ahead and finished it, and in the next film we improve. So that is, we feel we have, that's an important skill that we have learned, I would say, compared to what we were 3 years back, where, or I was, as individual artist we have
Mm.
that luxury, but when you are trying
Yes.
to produce as a process, then
Mm.
you cannot afford to wait for perfection every time.
Right. Right. Can you share the story behind the founding of the Happy Slate, and how was your journey like?
So the Happy Slate, we started around 2020, around during the when the pandemic had happened. So around that time, I had just gotten out of a job after around 6 years of working with a startup as the design head over there. So the startup had to close for different unfortunate reasons, but I at the end of it I was, back on the road, and I had some amount of money saved in as well, because I was working for 6 years, and I had an opportunity again to go into the space of exploring how to create original content and do it in a sustainable manner, which was always an exploration, right, throughout
Mm.
your creative journey. But now I had the opportunity to do that with a more focused, dedicated time, renewed energy after a while. So, so that's when I kind of restarted the idea of creating studio. I had done that like twice before, hadn't really worked out with
Mm.
various other things that I had done in the last 10 years. So, twice I had tried to open a studio, but 2 3 months after which I had moved on to other things. So this time when I started, though, I had my brother come
Okay.
into he came in to help me, as in terms
Mm.
of giving me advice, in terms of looking at other aspects of creation, of other aspects of a business. So he comes from he's an MBA who comes from a business background. He has worked with big businesses and understands what it takes
Mm.
to build business units, to scale
Mm.
them. Now that is something that I did not have an understanding of. I was a creator. I understood what
Mm.
it takes to direct a film, to create a good film. But these other aspects of business, which is selling,
Right.
sales, which
Mm-hmm.
is customer experience, building a team, which is strategy for the business, which is all these, which is finance processes. All of this, while I knew these terms, I didn't really put them. They didn't naturally come to me as an artist. But all
Mm-hmm.
of this together form a business. All of this together create enable you to do value creation, not
Right.
just film in itself. So those are the things which this time on my third attempt is what kind of, I would say, I did differently at the start.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
uh, so because again, because I had an advisor who was advising me on this business fundamentals. So that is when we started on this.
Mm.
And after that, also apart from him, there was my cousin who was staying with me when we started. We were flatmates at that time. He comes from a
Mm-hmm.
corporate background, and
Okay.
he also came in to help me with his name is Dave, and he came in to help me with sales and operations. Again, these are things that now I was forcing myself to learn. So every kind of help at this point really
Mm.
was invaluable. And then after that, I went. So I also had one of my very old friends, a very talented animator called Deep, and one of another of my cousin
Mm.
who was a very talented concept artist called Shaina, who also came into help. So essentially, this was the initial team that we started with. So I'm saying team, but everybody was pro bono at that time,
Mm.
and nobody was full time other than me. So this
Mm.
was kind of how we started Happy Slate at the very onset. And we started off by doing an initial sales drive where we got into where we reached out to around 30, 40, 50 different contacts built from our own databases, which was primarily built up of a lot of old clients that I had worked out with. So we reached out
Mm.
to them for around a couple of months, and with with meetings, but no, we made a deck and we pitched our company to them, pitched what we were doing to them with our portfolio. So these were all new
Mm.
for me, is what I'm trying to say. And
Right, right.
then after that, one or two customers, finally we landed one or two clients from that
Mm.
exercise of
Mhm.
reaching out to people. And we started working with them. And when we started working with them, we started focusing on delivering value to them, not just making a film and giving to them, which I used to do as a freelancer, right? But now we were
Mm.
looking at other aspects of delivering value to them, which is giving it on time, giving them a good customer experience, giving constant communication, understanding their needs, and seeing how the film can address those needs.
Mm.
So looking at it from a different angle right from the start on this. And once we uh, worked with this initial few clients, they started coming back to us for more and more projects, and they also started referring us to other clients. So that is when our clients started organically growing again,
Mhm.
because we were focusing on providing value to this to the clients. So because they saw value, because they were meeting their goals through what we were producing from them, we had repeat clients and them referring us to other clients. So
Okay,
once we
okay.
started growing, right?
Mhm.
So once we started growing, we started building our team. We had our first few. We had our first two employees around 2021, start of around 2021, around 3 months
Mhm.
into the company.
Mhm.
uh, so it was Krutuja and Karthik, so two of our first employees who
Mm.
are still part of our team in different forms.
Okay.
So
So by this time, there was like, was there a solid revenue generation, or you
there
were?
was there was one retainership which we had started with a client, which
Mm.
gave us the cushion to start to know that we have some future income coming to do
Okay.
the hiring. but
Mm.
uh, but other than that, there were some 2 3 clients which were engaging with us regularly, so there was not
Mm.
like a there was a growth that we could see. There wasn't
Okay.
like a there wasn't like huge amount of money coming in,
Mm.
but at least
Mhm.
we knew that we could hire short term and
Okay.
pay salaries for a while,
Mm. Okay.
right? So then that started growing, and
Mm.
then accordingly the team started growing, and the business started growing. But at the same time, the other thing that we did is we started our YouTube channel parallelly, because the
Okay.
goal was always to create our own original content. So
Mhm.
we started putting our content initially a bit
Right.
sporadically, but
Mhm.
then around Earth Day, when we saw our first
Mm.
viral film, after that we started doing films more consistently, and those films started again. Our YouTube presence again started getting us more more clients, more brand work,
Mm.
as well as audience. So that's kind of the story of how we shaped up the company over the last 3 years. And now we have after 3 years we have a team that is, I think I touched upon this earlier, a team 15-member team. We
Mhm.
have around 50 clients that we have already served, and we
Mm.
have 4 lakh subscribers on YouTube. So but this has been the process of coming to that part.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Like if you look back at the days when you were working as an individual artist, and then you decided to, start off with your own animation studio. So how was the transition, or how was this journey from being an independent artist and then, founding an animation studio and adapting to a strict mode of working, right? How was this journey for you? Like, what are the major changes that you notice creatively in whether it is decision making, or handling a team, or prioritizing certain ideas or certain approaches? Like, what are the major differences that you notice?
There are lots of differences. uh, Obviously there are like a huge number of differences to the way I was working as an independent artist. I mean, I spent what, 10 around 10 years of my career working as an independent artist and working in different setups, versus the last 3 years where I've been running my company. There is,
Mhm.
of course, a huge, like what I would say, a 360-degree difference between both, and the evolution has happened over the last 3 years and is still happening. So I wouldn't know where exactly to start. So, but one of the key things, because there is so many differences, but one of the
Mhm.
key differences that I have now, as in regards to approaching what my work versus what I had then, would be to look at other aspects of work beyond the creativity of the work, right? So when I was,
Mhm.
for example, when I was freelancing, or when I was working in a setup, or when I was creating my own content before, my primary and my holy grail was the creativity of the work. The creativity, is there enough creativity in that?
Mhm.
Is it fresh? Is it new, or is it generic? Does it have the imagination that needs
Right.
to come in the work? Is it production quality is high or not? So it was all about the work, right? But now I'm thinking
Mhm.
in terms of value creation when I'm doing that. That's my understanding right now, from the 3 years of running a business, is that work is one part of it. The creativity is still the core of it. Creativity is one part of the
Yes,
work, but there
of
are other
course. Yeah.
aspects beyond that which I did not understand the value of back then. The
Mhm.
other aspects being, how does this work create value now? Like, is the I could make a film and nobody sees it. It doesn't create any value for anybody. Versus I make
Mm.
a film, then I understand, who is the audience. How does this film reach to the audience? How does this film how what do I understand from the audience and tweak in my film so that, it's something that they would want to spend 5 minutes to watch, want to share, want
Mhm.
to with, so
Mm.
those aspects. And where do I put this film? How does it reach to my desired audience? And what how do I format it for better distribution to my audience? Do I make it into reels for Insta, for example? So those always I felt were fluff. I think as
Mm.
artists, everybody does that, right? We feel
Yes.
that work is critical. Everything else is secondary. But everything else, once I have started running a business, I've understood that
Mm.
everything else is equally important together. Uh, if you want to create value, if you just want to create work for creative satisfaction, then the
Mm.
creativity is everything, is the end work. But all
Right.
of this together is, am I finally being able to create value for my audience? Am I finally being able to, when I create a film for a client, am I finally being able to create value for my client, which would translate to, like, does it help them increase their brand awareness if I'm making a brand film for them? Does it, or to something as tangible as, does it help to, what all do I do so that finally I'm able to help them drive their sales if it's a marketing film that they're doing? So those are the different aspects that, it's not different, I would say additional aspects that is the
Mm.
primary difference in terms of how I used to approach uh, what I was creating back then versus what I'm creating back now. Of course, there is the additional huge aspect of now a team that is working on the content, and then setting up that team, and
Yes,
that
yes,
is
of
also
course.
part of that process. So but primarily it's the difference between just focusing on creativity versus focusing on the bigger value creation at the end of it.
On the business side of it,
The business side of it, yeah.
right?
So the way
Okay.
I understand right now, the business side for me at this level of understanding translates to
Hmm.
creating value for your customers, creating value for your audience, creating value for your team. Finally, how do you use this creativity to create some
Hmm.
tangible value for which then obviously revenue comes from value. So
Right, right.
that's the business side of things. So that is the key difference, I would say. But the core still
Okay.
remains creativity. The first thing I judge that I'm excited by with anything
Hmm.
that we do is there creativity in that? Does it is it exciting? Is it new, fresh? That
Hmm. Okay. So, like currently, how much is your role in the entire process of creating the animation content? Like, do you restrict yourself from maybe participating in certain stages of the pipeline, or you have to focus more on the business side, or you want, sometimes there is a dilemma if you want, if you can, creatively participate in all the stages, or sometimes it is you have to focus on the business, on the distribution, on the marketing of the content. So what is your current position, like where do you see yourself within the entire team structure?
right. So currently my role, uh, I'm not participating in all the stages of production of all the films. We're doing close to 100 films a year right now with a team of
Oh, that's
with a
massive.
team of 15, yeah, 15 full-time people. So
Hmm.
initially, in our starting days, I needed to be involved in all aspects of production. But now we have a team that is evolved, a team that is made up of talented people that is working beautifully well together as well. So my role on 50% of our productions is uh, is close to minimal. My role comes in at a very initial stage of setting the brief and signing off to an extent on pre-production. A lot of time that also is not needed because
Hmm.
we now have a team with senior designer, senior artist, or production lead who are capable enough to sign off and take decisions on films. But having said that, still we are on early stages. Still we are figuring out our processes and timelines. It ideally should be 100% if for us to scale, where I should not be actually for a business to work. The team should
Hmm.
entirely run the business. I should not be needed to looking into individual aspects of pipeline. So we are heading towards that. Currently, I think 30% of the films still has some degree of involvement from me in various stages. So it's not defined. So
Hmm.
usually my involvement comes at the initial briefing stage. We're understanding the client requirement, figuring out the exact the exact what do you say the exact kind of film, the exact tonality of the film for the
Right,
client,
right.
or for the or similarly for the originals based on the calendar that we decide. So post that, typically there is not a lot in pre-production. There is some involvement, but other than that,
Hmm.
the team runs unless some very high uh, what do you say some very high value projects, high stake projects. That's where I also am closely involved, not directly in production but in terms of directing the team as the production happens. Other than
All right.
that, my time mostly goes into every other part of the business as well. So which is uh, which is like a lot of it goes into setting up the team, hiring the team, setting the processes,
Hmm.
and then it goes into planning the strategy of the company. What are our goals, how far are we from that, how close are we to that, and and looking at the overall process mainly in terms of things.
Okay. So this is like a personal question from an artist to another artist. Like now that you are inclined, or let's say you are performing multiple roles, and you are handling team, and you're also looking into business side of things, do you miss the artist within you sometimes, like or you
Yes.
have very smoothly adapted to the other roles?
No, I wouldn't say smoothly. It's so there are two questions, right? So do I miss the
Mm,
artist with me, or do I have I smoothly adapted to the other roles? So let me answer the second part, which is easier. So the I haven't smoothly adjusted at all.
mm,
Or this is
mhm,
very alien to this other aspects of business. This aspects of working to create value is very alien to me, and I think in general to artists, because there are two very different kinds of thinking, although complementary. But this has been a tough learning phase. It's been really, by doing it over 3 years, it's been a very slow learning. I'm still learning, so hopefully in some time I can say that I have learned it. But it's a very rickety learning curve, not smooth at all. Regarding do I miss my time as an artist? Yes. So there are times where I'm not able to mostly prioritize giving time to expressing my creativity. Be it a drawing. I used to do like a drawing a day. I used to make
mm,
my own comics and stuff. While I still am working in my day-to-day activities, I am working in some form or the other. When I'm reviewing some work, I'm looking at it from the
mm.
lens of, creatively, how good is it, how strong it is, how can it
Right.
be stronger. But in terms of working on a project directly, where I am creating stuff, that has taken a backseat. But I think it's a matter of prioritization. It's not that I still find time sometime in between to make a drawing a day. So I think it's about getting that discipline where I
Mm,
do this. Once I learn this, I think I'll be, because this I'm still learning, so it's taking so much time. Once I learn this, I should be able to then devote equal amount of time to pursue my personal creative endeavors. Like for example, one of the things that we have been planning for a long time is to make our short film,
mm.
which the intent is for me to direct, which I used to do initially. All of our earlier films that you see have
Yes,
been
yes.
directed by me on the
Hmm.
Slate. Now the team directs it. But now my goal is to direct our first 10-minute short film and for a festival circuit. But that has been, getting postponed for forever. So that is so I have to make time for it. I do miss it, but I don't repent it. I think it's just a matter of when I come back to it. It's not that I have left a train.
Hmm. I think it's a very calculated choice or a calculated risk on the part of your the creative side, as well as the what should we say, the other pursuits in life. Like we need to we always aim to you know show our work to a larger audience, and also, like if we are working on a project like an animation, so it's very tough for us individual artists to complete the entire thing. So you need to have a team, you need to have people who are supporting you in creating the final output. And I think it's a journey which is full of learning, and it also gives you rewarding outputs, right? Your channel, the Happy Slate, has a massive subscriber base. And did you envision this founding the channel? Like, what were your goals with the Happy Slate? What did you start off with, and how has it, traveled so far?
Yeah. So talking about the channel specifically, we the goal was always to create. The goal has always been, the bigger goal has always been to create our own original content,
Hmm.
and figure out a way to do it sustainably. That was always the goal, right? So doing brand films is is like a complementary goal to that, to
Okay.
facilitate that.
Hmm.
Now that's why we started the YouTube channel, to create our own original content.
Hmm.
And we did not, when we started, I didn't really have a vision as to how big or small it would be, because I didn't have any experience before
Hmm.
that, and I didn't have enough market understanding either. So when I started, the only goal was to, create original content. And I knew that, as artists, that there is something that you have the potential for and you want to create. I always knew that I had the potential to create original content, good original content, and
Right.
I was just not doing it. I think a lot of artists feel that intuitively, right?
Yes, yes. Mm.
So that was the goal for right, and with that smile, I see acknowledgement. So
Mm.
so that was the goal with the Happy Slate. And then we initially, let me tell you the journey of the Happy Slate channel, YouTube channel specifically.
Okay.
So we started, I think, around 2020, and initially we put a few films sporadically, and and then around once we put so actually we once we had put 3 to 4 films, that is when one of my co-founders, Shilpa, the one that I mentioned, she came in
Mhm.
with some fresh ideas around YouTube content, around the kind of content we were making, right? And that's when we started a few months after her joining, we produced we had our first viral film. We had our experience of our first viral film, which was a film on Earth Day, which we did on around March, which we did around 2021 March or April, around
Okay.
that. Got some
Mhm.
27K views on day one on that, which was huge
Oh,
for us
wonderful.
back.
Mhm.
So that's when we realized that there is we can create we can actually create engagement for audience. We can make audience watch our content, create value for them
Mhm.
through
Mm.
our original content. So that gave us the conviction then to start doing it more and more
On a
consistent
regular basis.
on
Okay.
a regular
Mhm.
basis. So we started,
Mhm.
although it was not generating any revenue for us back then, but we started doing it more and more regularly. Once or twice a month, we started putting films on time according to schedule, understanding trends and putting films around those trends, and
Mhm.
gradually started growing that channel. And then it grew much, quite a lot than what we had anticipated in the first year. And while it did not make us enough money, what it got us was we got a lot of visibility through that, and we got a lot of brands came to us through that. So it did help us that way. We still don't get a lot of money from our YouTube. We spend a lot on our YouTube, but that's like, it helps us get more brand work, and more importantly, it helps us towards our bigger goal of creating content for directly for an audience, and being able to make them consume it, watch it, share it, care for it. So that's kind of been, so currently right now, to give some context, we are at around close to 4 lakh subscribers in around 3 years,
Mhm.
and we have around 1.5 million monthly views on that. That doesn't translate to a lot of revenue, ad revenue, but it translates to a lot of value that we are creating. And so that has become one of our primary goals
Well,
going on.
congratulations on that. And I hope this keeps on growing and we
Yeah.
get to see more and more content from you all. All right. So, do you also collaborate with other artists, like apart from your team, on certain projects?
We collaborate with so in when we do brand films, we collaborate with a few partner studios, time, and we with a few artists who work as freelancers with us outside the team. That's
Mm.
one kind of collaboration we do. In terms of collaborating on original content, that has been on our cards. We have talked to a few other studios in similar space, but nothing has materialized yet, because everybody has their own priorities, and everybody's
Right.
first has to attend to brand films to pay the bills. So things haven't fallen in place as of yet, but we are actually looking to, it's in the plans for us to collaborate with other studios, other independent artists, musicians, stand-up
Mhm.
comedians, that will create new kind of content and reach new audience through that.
Like, do you think these sort of collaborations will contribute to the studio's success?
Yeah, definitely, because through these we will reach, will create new kind of content, because
Mm.
you'll have fresh creative ideas from a different perspective coming in. And second is, it will help us reach new audience, because whoever we collaborate with, we are, of course, we will have a will have a certain expectation that they will have their own niche audience. We have our own niche audience, so we'll
Right,
help
right.
each other. So we'll get exposure to new audience. So that way, it will help creatively. It will help. So it will help in both those forms.
Okay. Um, can we like discuss any specific projects or characters that have been particularly well received by your audience, and what do you think made them successful?
So we have one of our films which has been our OG successful film is Night Before Math Test. So that
Hmm.
has I think around 5 million views and counting right now, and hopefully it becomes our first film to a billion is far away, but yeah. So that has kind of been in our original films one of our hugest successes. And if I talk of brand films, there is this property we created for Kotak Bank called Bachat Kumari. It is
Hmm.
around this little girl who it's around a mascot. It's a quirky little very cute character, which is a
Okay.
mascot for her bank account for kids. So that is also one of our ad films which has gone viral, and we have done a series of around 9 to 10, and it has kind of become the face of Kotak Junior brand. So these have been, in terms of what I would say, our biggest success in terms of brand films, in terms of originals. What was your second question?
Yeah, what do you think has made them so successful? Like the films that you mentioned, what
Hmm.
aspect of those films made them so, uh, favorite or viral, or let's say successful in terms of the reach or distribution that they got?
Hmm. I think Night Before Math Test. One of the things that really uh, one thing is of course the relatability on that. In both this
Mm.
film there's a high level of relatability because what we show in Night Before Math Test is a kid, a very a kid revising for his exams on the night before
Hmm.
exams, and then trying to peek into his books and not remembering. So simple day to day things, but with a high level of relatability to that, and a high level of again creativity and imagination to that, how we have dramatized that. So having said
Right.
that, that's kind of what we strive for in every film. So I cannot put my finger on what exactly made it tick, but
Hmm.
I guess all the ingredients came together perfectly in that, in terms of being relatable, being creative, and
I think it all comes down to relatability.
I wouldn't
If
say
it
it
is
all comes
relatable,
down to
it'll,
reality.
yeah.
It's definitely one of the important factors,
Hmm.
but it comes down to multiple things. It comes down to relatability. It comes down to, like I said, creativity. You could have relatable but boring stuff. So
Yes.
comes down to that, and it because the way the voices are in that, the way the characters act, there's a lot of creativity in that. If you see Night
Hmm.
Before
Yes,
Mac Test
yes.
or Bachchat Kumari has an amazing voice, which everybody falls in love with. The
Hmm.
character is amazing. The situations are so funny and so relatable. She is, saving everything that she's eating tiffin. She's saving half of it for next day. She's reading comics.
Hmm.
She's reading one page, saving the other
Hmm.
for next, and
Right.
eventually, she is the ultimate, who saves everything. He's eating chocolate, one today, one
Hmm.
tomorrow. So
Hmm.
basically taking one insight that everybody relates with, and then exaggerating it to dramatize it, and making it
Hmm.
quirky, making it funny. I think that kind of works to an extent, but then there is no formula for what
Right,
makes a
right.
film. Comes
Hmm.
down to being creative consistently, and some of those work, some of them don't at the
And
end of the
also
day.
experimenting a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
I think
I mean,
that
we
that's
have
the.
really good films, if not better. So a
Hmm.
lot of those haven't worked, a lot of those have worked. So
I think your the night before maths exam,
mm,
that video has a lot of potential, and it is relatable because kids are going to have exams for forever, and they will be scared, they will
yeah,
be fearful. Let's hope it reaches 1 billion mark.
yeah. Hopefully soon. Every year around the exam time, it spikes up,
It
and
spikes
then
up,
you
yes.
pushes it back after that.
Right, right. Okay, and can you recall some memorable audience interactions or reactions on your animations or the comic strips that you've made that have impacted you personally or professionally? maybe in a positive or a negative direction.
Yeah, okay. So, regarding animation, regarding the comic strips and animation, so that was like a long back. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't really have recent recollection of that. But in terms of audience reaction on our films, they keep pouring in almost every film we do. There is so much love, so much constant love our from our subscribers and non-subscribers also. Just supporting the channel, which talk about things like,
Hmm.
we have been following your channel, we have seen you from day one, we have seen you grow, and everybody starts talking about their own personal experiences after
Hmm.
looking at the films, starting to, and people have conversations within themselves. People pick out specific scenes and say that,
Hmm.
this happened to me. Then people have longer, in some of our serious films, people have longer, deeper instances of their own life, which they very personal anecdotes of their life, which they
Hmm.
mention. People share a lot of, people keep saying, sharing hugs and hearts and love, and on our channel constantly. So that is there. And what really, I remember a few of the messages which really have touched us. I mean, beyond obviously all of this, is sometimes we have received long mails on our mailboxes, where people have written, very. I wouldn't remember the exact content right now, but very heartfelt and very detailed description of their relationship with Happy Slate, of why they love what they love. And we have a few of those which we intend to frame, which just come out of the blue, and which really makes us understand that we are creating some real value at the end of the day through this.
I think you touched upon some really important points, like how people connect with your content and how they share their own stories and reciprocate. And that, I think, that is the most rewarding thing, if you can touch the audiences at a level where they feel the need to, maybe appreciate your work, or recall something from their own life experiences and share that with you. I think that is very human. Whenever you see
Yeah.
something creative, you want to engage with it somehow or relate to
Yeah.
it,
Mm.
right? I think that that is the most rewarding aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to see it put up in words from so many people in so many different words,
Hmm.
makes you realize that you are touching so many individual lives.
Great. So, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for growth and innovation in the Indian animation and comic book industry? And how do you plan to capitalize on them? Like, do you have any future plans of exploring or capitalizing, these domains?
Yeah. So to be honest, I have a very surface level understanding of the animation industry per se.
Hmm.
However, one thing that is very clear, I mean, that has always been clear to a lot of us, is that, which is kind of a bit of an obvious thing out there, is that there is a pretty big market for Indian animated content, with lot of opportunities now, even becoming more with OTTs and everything.
Yes.
However, with very few success stories,
Hmm.
right? I think that has been obvious to everybody, all of us who have been in the field since a long time, and that is what a lot of people have tried to crack, but there hasn't been a lot of success in this. So I think
Right.
what is clear is that the market exists, a big market exists
Hmm.
for original content, opportunity
Hmm.
exists, as has been validated in US, in Japan, with their huge animation industries, original animation industries. But it hasn't been cracked in India yet. There have been success stories sporadically. There have been success stories across niche, across sections of audience. Like, for example, there are success stories for kids animated content, like Chota Bheem and a
Hmm.
few other examples. There are some success stories on YouTube, like you have Not Your Type and a few others who
Mm.
have like a few million
Right.
followers. But that's like a very small part of the potential of the market when you compare it to the, when you go to the US, you have the Simpsons, you have Rick and Morty, you have of course the
Mm-hmm.
DreamWorks, Pixar, and all of that. When you go to Japan, it's even bigger probably. So I think the bottom line is there is a huge market in original animation content, and that's what we plan to play on eventually, and hopefully create uh, uh, one bigger success in the market. But that's easier said
Mm-hmm.
than done, because this gap has been there for decades. A lot of people have tried.
Yes.
For some reason, it hasn't been cracked. Like we had Hanuman at one time, that
Mm-hmm.
was one success, but then nothing happened after that. We had Chacha Chaudhary, which was a success for a long time in the comic space, but there hasn't been enough. So
Right.
that's what we are hoping to crack. Regarding how we do that, we we I mean, right now our plan is to create, first, get success on YouTube as one channel of original content, then
Mm-hmm.
uh, then parallelly move on to short films, get exposure globally through that, then get into the OTT space and crack long form content over there. So a path like this to create, again, as I mentioned, to create Indian characters, Indian stories that are popular across uh, wide segment of audience.
So, do you think there's a lack of talent, or there is a lack of motivation in terms of how many artists or how many people are actually trying to get that kind of content out in the public? Like, what is the major reason for the Indian creators for, not getting onto that level of success? Or like, if we compare it to the West, we always say that we are lagging behind or we are far behind them, and we are just catching up with the industry. What do you think is the major factor that results to that sort of comparison or that sort of difference? Is it talent, or is it something else?
It's definitely not talent. I think
Hmm.
that's kind of clear. It's not talent because we have, we have our artists working on big budget Hollywood films
Yes.
on outsourced work, right?
Like,
So,
almost on the almost in most of the big films, the credit list is full of Indian artists.
right.
Hmm.
So definitely it's not talent. I don't know
Hmm.
what it is. I know for sure it's not talent. It's not a problem with talent. Maybe it's a problem with vision. Maybe it's a
Hmm.
problem with someone, because it's a market which doesn't exist. It has to be created. Once it's
Created.
created, it can be replicated by others. So the point is, it hasn't been created yet in India. It's not that we are lagging behind. If we have a
Hmm.
market, we have comparison. The point is the market doesn't. The content space doesn't exist right now. Right? Apart from kids animation content and few indie content, we don't have
Hmm.
original content which are
Right.
that huge. So I think it's about, uh, probably, I'm guessing here, right? It's no one has an answer,
Hmm.
but probably it's someone with a vision and with a plan and with sustained effort, creating that market. So today or tomorrow somebody will do that, and once that is
Hmm.
created, then there will be replications of that. Once there is one Pixar in India, there will be a DreamWorks, there will be a Sony, there will be
Hmm.
everything else. So I think it's just that it is that it's a new thing that has to be created.
Absolutely. So more and more artists and creators have to, show some conviction, show some trust, and try to create original content. And that's how we can, maybe,
Which
as
we
you
are
said.
artists and creators are creating original content. You have so much
Hmm.
content right now, and so many success stories also on the creators economy on YouTube, on Insta.
Hmm.
You have a lot of
Hmm.
artists with their own fan bases and fan followings, like Not Your Type and a few others who have like millions
Hmm.
of subscribers. So artists are doing it.
Hmm.
I think it's about it's about I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. Let's just
Let's
hope.
wait and watch
Yeah,
how does the industry grow. Yeah.
someone of us, let's hope, cracks that and grows it. And
I'm sure there are lots of people working on that side, and it's just a matter of time when you discover such content or such artists here and there on various platforms. Right? They have their own, as you mentioned, they have their own set of audience. They have their own fan base. It's just that they are maybe not in the mainstream as yet.
right, right,
Like the
right.
industry maybe has to like recognize them in sort of a way that helps them to gain more traction and gain more feedback, or let's say more success. Right?
Right.
Let's be positive about it, and let's hope we get to see more and more original content from India. So coming to the next question related to this original Indian content thing, like I think you have to an extent cracked the let's say the code of making content for Indian audience, which is relatable and which reflects our culture and experiences in different ways. So, what is your advice, or what would you suggest to the aspiring animators or comic artists who want to create content that reflects their own culture and experience? Like, what should they focus more on?
Sorry, can you come again? Who? What would be the advice to
what would
artists?
what would what would be your advice to the aspiring animators and comic artists who want to create content that reflects their own culture and their experiences?
The advice would be to create the content. The advice would be to there is two aspects to it. So one is, of course, to get down to create the content, and second is,
Mhm.
of course, you want a level of success uh, to to be able to do it consistently. You want some kind of validation of the content as well. So there are two things that I wouldn't call it advice. There are two principles that
Mm.
I follow, that I would suggest to anyone who asks, who discusses about that with me. So one would be to look at how to focus on creativity. To When we are creating our own content based on our own experiences, how can we bring our own creativity into that? That is what will fuel creating the content. That is what will bring a soul into the content that we create. And second is, of course, to again bring that business mindset into it. So that when you create a content, then look at how can you create value for others. Who are you creating it for, and how can you create value for them through this content? To look at it from both of these angles, and then keep doing it consistently. And then you sort of convert your content making into a more sustainable form, where, because if you create value for someone, then you get revenue for that, then it becomes sustainable that way. So if you do not look at it from creating value, it's just content which some people will like, and it doesn't go beyond that. And of course, you will have your creative satisfaction.
Okay. So like if we talk about the education part for artists, do you think from your own experience, did your formal education play an important role or a significant role in how you you know how your journey transformed, like how your creative let's say your creative ambitions were transformed from when you were probably doing it just as a hobby to where you took it as a professional career option? So what was the
Right.
role of education?
Well, for me, my design education happened when I got into IDC, IIT Bombay.
Okay.
So, for me, that played a huge role. That played a huge role where in terms of exposure, not in
Mm,
terms of learning tools or learning techniques or learning skills. That was an ongoing process. Is still ongoing. I don't think
mm,
my time at IDC really played a part in improving that. What it played was giving me the exposure. There were peers, there were mentors, there
mm,
was an environment where everybody was an artist, and everybody had a different perspective on being an artist. And everybody was hugely talented, and being in that environment, basically through that exposure, I understood. I mean, that was a pivotal point, I would say,
mhm,
phase in my journey as an artist, where I could understand more clearly what is artistic expression, art, uh, what is an artistic way of thinking, if I, for the lack of a better word, right? What an artistic journey. So till then, uh, I understood skills. I had already learned animation, I had already learned drawing, I had already learned the tools, but this exposure was missing because I was
mm,
isolated in my own space. I was creating these. So
mhm.
I think this is the key part for me, at least, that education played, and think that is the key part that education probably plays in general, because these days you learn everything
Yes.
you can do it on your own.
Mhm,
So yeah, I think that's. But if you can get that exposure somewhere else, if you
mhm,
can be in the right groups of artists, I think that itself is an it's an equal is the same education, if you ask me. There are, for
mhm.
example, Bangalore, there are groups of watercolor artists who I used to go join for some
Yes.
time, and that was a
Mhm,
huge education for me. And so I think if just being that environment is the education. So if even if you are not going to design school per se,
mhm.
uh, you can still have the education, the exposure, the environment. So
It's
yeah,
just that you have to be, self motivated and proactive in adapting to different modes of learning and pushing yourself to, maintain a discipline. Is it?
that, and the going out and getting more exposure,
Hmm.
meeting other artists, being in that space with them, exchanging ideas and learning. Of course, learning is a given, that has to happen always. Without skills,
Yeah.
you can.
And that is an ongoing thing. Like it's never a point where you can say that, okay, I've learned everything and now I'll be, you know,
How can
on with
you
my
can
professional journey.
never learn everything,
So we're
actually.
learning every day and, experimenting and failing a lot of times. I think that's the that those are the common ingredients of any sort of creative pursuit.
Right. Yeah. True. Though you
All
stop
right.
learning, you stop growing.
Hmm. So how do you keep yourself motivated, like especially in terms of challenging times, or in times when you have a creative block? What is your main source of motivation, both in terms of like an individual artist and in terms of let's say taking the happy slate forward?
Um, for me, I mean, I'm sure this is a very personal way of dealing with that. Everybody will have their own way of dealing with blocks, is what you're mentioning, right? So
Hmm.
when you are not clear of how to look at a problem, or how to look at a creative problem or a business problem or any other problem. So for me, when that happens, and it does happen often, so when that happens, I tend to, you know, I tend to take a break from work, and I tend to just go into my own private space, and I try to visualize my problems, and I try to understand where the different where is the mistake in the way I'm looking at the problem. That is what I try to understand when I that's my personal approach when I'm in a
Hmm.
block. So I always I have come to the understanding that it's always a problem with the way you are looking at it. Suddenly, you are not looking at it at things in a creative manner. You are looking at things in a manner where you are conforming to patterns. So it's I take a step back and I try to see how where I'm conforming to said
Hmm.
patterns, and where and where can I how can I again see it in the right manner, see the problem. And it applies to any problem, creative problem or business problem. And usually after spending a few hours, sometimes a day, I come back with the problem, with the approach resolved. Then I go back and then problem execute, work, back to work after that.
Okay. So the Happy Slate is mostly working on short form content, like you are working on very short films. It mostly ranges from a minute to, let's say, 4 or 5
Yeah.
minutes to the max,
Yeah,
right?
as of now, yeah, 4 5 minutes to the max. Some of our recent films have started hitting the 4 minute mark, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, typically 2 to 4 minutes is where our channel content is landing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We do plan to gradually lengthen the duration a bit, but gradually, because we
Mm-hmm.
also don't want to lose out on the consistency of production of the films. Uh,
And
we do we
yeah,
do
please go on.
uh, yeah, so we do we are planning to work on longer format in the space of short films, which is where we
Okay.
are outside YouTube,
Okay.
where we are looking to do a 10 12 minute and
Right.
eventually once we go into OTT spaces even longer, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the eventual steps.
Okay. So you mentioned that you all are producing almost 100 films a year,
Yeah.
like in the shorter format. So
No,
can you
100
walk us?
including
So
the sorry.
I'm talking about the films that you are posting or publishing
100.
on YouTube. Yeah,
Mm,
on the YouTube channel. So those are
that's not.
mostly like 2 minutes. So you are producing almost 100 of them a year.
No, 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 no. On
Then
YouTube, we are producing around 100 is our total production. We're not producing 100 on
okay,
YouTube.
including other brand films or other projects, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In YouTube, we are producing around, roughly three a month on an average. So that boils
Mhm.
down to around 30 to 40 films in a year.
All right, all right. Okay, but collectively also, if the number is anywhere close to 100, that's a huge deal. So
Yeah.
what is your creative process like? How do you conceptualize and develop the entire animation? What is the typical pipeline that you follow?
For us, it starts with the brief. So at a very initial stage, if it's let's say a
Mhm.
brand film, we sit with the client and we understand. We set a brief of the project, like what is going to be the tonality, what kind of film is it going to be? Let's say a product film, if they are showcasing, or is it going to be an ad film if it's their brand awareness? If they want to drive brand awareness, we look at other
Mhm.
references, other examples to kind of define the brief, the goals of the film, which is
Okay.
again what's the value that we are trying to create with the film before
Mhm.
we go into the
Mhm.
creative process. Similarly, with if it's for our YouTube, we define as to what is the what is the goal of the film. Is it to drive more views, which is mostly then we pick up what are the key themes that we could work with, which would trend, or is it to
Mhm.
diversify the kind of content we make. Then so those are the goals we set initially to not goals as in a top level brief. So there'll be goals, there'll be references, there will be kind of tonality of the film. Is it a motion design film? Is it going to be in 3D? Is it what is going to be the cost of the film? So all of those things are first for us when we start a production. Now, after that, we get into ideation and scripting. So, ideation and scripting is a team activity for us. So, like I
Mhm.
mentioned, there's a 3 to 4 people team. We come up with multiple ideas. We validate within us, brainstorm, and make those. We come up with 2 3 ideas that we are happy with, out of which finally we select one idea to
Okay.
roll with.
Okay.
And if it's a client, of course, it's with client validation and client inputs and everything. Then after the idea is done, we develop the script. So idea and script kind of run parallelly. So the script happens, and that's also again a team activity, because it's about ideas. So you bounce and new ideas come. So finally, we
Mhm.
have a approved idea coming out of that process,
Okay.
approved script. So post that we get into post production. So this is the ideation and brief stage. Then we get into
Mm-hmm.
pre-production. Sorry, I said post production.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pre-production. So in pre-production, we again pre-production is also a very idea-driven team activity. So we come up with visual ideas in terms of what are the kind of ideas that we want at different places in the script. So those would be doodles, references, and pulling up references. Here, this scene should be like that. This kind of composition, this kind of stuff. Then that evolves into a storyboard and animatics and design elements, character designs, and design compositions, look and feel frames. So we kind of said that in the pre-production stage. Again, that is a very collaborative process with a lot of brainstorming and setting the overall treat. So the film is kind of directed at this phase in a way, right? So once that is locked, and these are again locked, once we lock this, we don't go back. So pre-production is done. If it's a client film, again completely aligned with the client in terms of that this is the pre-production, everybody is happy, then you get
Mm-hmm.
into production. Now, if you have locked all of these, then production becomes walk in the park, because
Mm-hmm.
then you don't change stuff later on, right? So then the artists, the designers, the voiceover artists, the animators can focus on creativity, can focus on just expressing themselves freely and being creative, being imaginative, being aesthetic on the production without because everything is fixed now, right? So you just focus
Right.
on the quality of it.
Mm-hmm. You have a
And
solid plan that you need to follow,
exactly,
right?
exactly. If
Okay.
if
Mm-hmm.
later on you change animatics, then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a mess. If you don't lock the animatics and get into production, it becomes a
Mm-hmm.
mess.
Right.
And yeah, and then it's straightforward. So you finish the production, and then you do some post production and editing, and then you package the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Put watermarks, put in this, put in subtitles, package it for the medium that you're doing. If it's for YouTube, if it's for a brand
Right.
film with
Right.
brand element. So that's roughly the entire process.
Mm-hmm. And would you like to mention some of the tools or software that you prefer using?
We are mostly working with the Adobe suite. So
Okay.
it's our all of our designs happen on Photoshop and Illustrator. When we
Mm-hmm.
do concept art and designs, essentially, if it's a vector
Mm-hmm.
design, it happens in Illustrator or then we do our animation happens on After Effects and in Adobe Animate it's called now instead of Flash.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So those are the two softwares we typically work with for animation, because most of our work happens in 2D.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and then after that we are editing and post production happens in After Effects, and editing happens in Premiere. That's it. Our voice,
All
we
right.
record our voices on Audacity,
Mm-hmm.
and that's mostly, so it's entirely the Adobe ecosystem. Sometimes when you do a
Mm-hmm.
3D, we work a bit in Blender, but
Okay.
it's open source, and
Mm-hmm.
so mostly that is the ecosystem.
Okay. So when you're hiring talent for maybe any phase of the production, do you have specific preferences on the software that they are trained on,
No, no.
or you are open to, maybe putting in some time and training them on the software that you are using?
The
Like
software is
mostly when student when like artists are in the learning phase, when there are student, they tend to focus more on the trendy tools which are being used in the industry, or sometimes they look out for maybe open source software that they can get access to easily, and they have the basic skills, but then when the time comes for them to join professionally, to join a company or join in the industry, they are mostly concerned with whether it is okay if they don't know some popular software or not. Like, how does it play in the stage where you are hiring for your team?
Yeah, so there are 2 points. There are two aspects to this question. Actually, I mean, the first aspect is what you referred to, which is do we look at software or not.
Hmm.
The second aspect is the bigger aspect is what do you look for when you are building a team, because team building is one of the very important factors which I've learned over the last
Hmm.
3 years, critical to the success of a company. So, regarding your first point, we do not look at software. it's
Mm.
not we do look at whether they have technical skills or not. We look at whether they can create stuff. We do assignments, whether they
Hmm.
can create aesthetic stuff in their field, right? Whether it's an
Hmm.
animation,
Let's say
illustration.
they have an understanding of, like, if you talk about concept art or digital art creation, maybe they are
Mhm.
using a software like Krita or Clip Studio, or
Doesn't matter.
maybe
Doesn't matter.
uh,
Doesn't.
so they have an understanding of how
Yes.
layering works, and how, so that
Yeah.
similar thing can be adapted to Photoshop or
It's
other.
one day learning curve. I mean,
Yeah.
if anybody who has learned Krita is smart enough to pick up Photoshop. So it's not.
Right, right.
See, as long as they have the attitude to learn and shift, I think
Exactly.
the software becomes secondary. As long as they understand any software, like you
Hmm.
said, the concept of layering,
Yeah.
concept of thing to be able to create
Hmm.
in a digital medium. That is
Hmm.
what we look for. We don't really even. I don't think we even ask what software they use.
Hmm. And do you also look for a formal training, or
No,
let's say if a person has no background
doesn't
of a formal training in the field,
doesn't
but
matter.
they have the skills?
Yeah. We look for, I'll tell you what we look for. So
Mhm.
all of these, at least at this stage, are, I mean, I'm very clear they don't matter to us and they shouldn't matter.
Mm.
So what we look for when we are hiring are two things. So one is technical skills. Technical skills as in the specific field in for which we are hiring. So if we are hiring, let's say, a concept artist, or let's say we are hiring an animator, are they,
Mm.
do they understand fundamental principles of animation and can they
Mm.
apply it? That's easy to validate with a small assignment and
Mm.
portfolio. That's the easier part to validate. Then the other important part that we look at, that we
Mm.
realized in the process of hiring over the last 3 years,
Mm.
is the professional attitude of the person. Now that is something that is a big difference from what I would have looked for in a person when hiring 3 years back. I would have only looked at technical skills, where the
Mm.
questions what software they use, those would be more important. But now what you I understand is when you're hiring for people to work in a team, your technical skills is important, but what is equally
Mm.
important is their professional attitude. How good, responsible are they?
Right.
How much ownership are they taking of the work they do and of the failure of that work more than success of that work?
Mm.
how how can how are they, how much open are they to feedback? How much would they add value to other members of the team? How much do they share their knowledge when they come in?
Mm.
So when they come into a team, because when you're working as an individual with an individual, it's only technical skills matter. But when you are having someone to come and be part of a team, what matters is how much value they add to the team, which is much beyond just technical skills. So that
Mm.
becomes equally important as technical skills when we hire someone. So therefore, your things like what college they went to, what software they use, they don't really play a part in this decisioning with these two things.
Mhm. Great. Okay. Lastly, what message do you want, or let's say, do you hope your audience takes away from your content, your animations that you do, and what legacy do you want to leave as a creator in the Indian animation, or let's say entertainment industry?
As what I would want to, again, that's my aspiration.
Mhm.
As a creator, as a studio, as someone who is excited by animation, as
Mhm.
someone who wants to create impact through animation, is to create uh, some pieces of a body of work, around Indian characters, Indian stories, which is timeless,
Mhm.
and which is also which also is something that is consumed by an audience across a wide group of age, a wide group of social demographic, not a niche audience, but something that is watched by a large amount of audience across age groups, across other social demographics. So, and that is timeless. That's not something that lives, creates some buzz and
Mhm.
dies. So
Right,
that
right.
is what. I would want to eventually, leave behind, if we put it that way. But yeah, a body of work like that, if I would create that, I would think kind of would have achieved a goal that has been there from the start in this journey as an artist.
Well, I think you're already on the path, and the content that Happy Slate is producing is timeless. And we all enjoy the content as an audience. For those who haven't followed the channel, I'll put the links in the description. Please watch the Happy Slate, follow, subscribe, like, comment, and engage with the content. And Rakesh, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really an insightful conversation, and I hope maybe sometime in future we can get on this kind of a session again and talk more about the process behind making the content and the related things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gaurav. The pleasure is all mine. I think it was equally, it was really a good, relaxing, very natural conversation that happened between us, and it also made me reflect on a lot of things. So thank you for having me. I mean, it's my first experience doing something like this, and it was time well spent. I am looking forward
Same
to
here.
meet you and maybe meet in person sometime in the future. Very nice
Sure,
talking to you.
definitely, definitely.
All right.
All right, thank you.